Hi, my name is Niels, co-founder of Dingy Studio. As both a seasoned web developer and UI designer with deep expertise in the web platform and modern design tools, I bridge the critical gap between design and development while leading our fully remote digital strategy team, helping organizations create sustainable solutions that transform user experience into business success, especially as AI reshapes how we interact with technology. Today, I want to talk about content warehouses. Imagine the last time you saw a huge corporation doing one of these brand relaunches where they seemingly overnight changed the entire face of their brand design, their name, their design, everything on all of the websites, on all of their social media all at once. And you wondered, how on earth did they pull this off? This is what we're going to talk about today. How you as a small to medium-sized organization can benefit from setting up a content warehouse. To get into this, let me share our journey at Dingy Studio. So as many of you, we were also running a website on WordPress and had used WordPress before. We actually had, many different website systems. And apart from the fact that we always seem to reinvent our website every 2 to 3 years, we were especially annoyed by the fact that we had the feeling that we were copy-pasting stuff from one point to the other. And we just realized that traditional CMSs had a lot of limitation, and we were longing for better organization and overview of our own stuff, if it were on the website or not. But we always had this issue that all of our content, all of the stuff that we needed in our day-to-day job were in different places. Something was on Notion and something else was on Dropbox or on OneDrive or in a Google Doc. And some of the stuff was copy-pasted into our website. And so I think this is a very relatable experience for many of you out there. And today I want to share how we jumped the curve from this traditional scattering of content all over the place to having everything in one central content warehouse, we call it, or think of it as a hub. The name doesn't really matter. Just imagine all of your content and everything you need your teams to collaborate on can be in the same place. What I want to go over today is what are content warehouses? How does team collaboration work on this sort of thing? What's the power of content? What is structured content and what's the power of structured content? I'm going to get into a couple of practical examples, and we're also going to talk about aspects like security, maybe even performance benefits, technical benefits in general, and how this can really help your team to jump the curve. So let's get into it. Content warehouse is this one central place where you store all of your content. And what do I mean by content? So I think to ease into this, think about everything that you have on your website, all of your product descriptions, maybe testimonials, maybe even customer support or help content, blog posts, testimonials, all this sort of stuff that is publicly customer facing. All of this might be, just to pick this example, somewhere in your WordPress website that you run as your organization. Now, running a website is more complicated than most people always assume because, it's a website, but there are many, many aspects to it that I'm going to talk about in this podcast in the future as well. But just to get into the aspects that I want to talk about today, there's security benefits. We have flexibility of how we handle our content in the future. We can do different things with a content warehouse that is you can use that content on not only this website, you can use it on multiple different websites that are all connected to the same warehouse. You could even connect it to apps, customer support portals, your social media channels. As I mentioned in the intro, you could even print a book out of this. The main point is that you have all of the content, and with this, let's be frank, all of your organization's intel, you just have that in one place, and as such, much more actionable. And we're going to see why it's much more actionable further down into the episode. One big aspect of a content warehouse is that you can collaborate with your team in real time on this. So I think most of you might know how the experience works on a Google Doc. Like, you suddenly see differently colored cursors all jumping around in your document, and you and your team can literally just, wherever you are on the world, as long as you're connected through the internet, you can just type into the same document. This is not necessarily a central aspect of a content warehouse, but with the solution that we're using, that platform is called Sanity. With Sanity, all of your editors can work on the same document in the same platform all at the same time, and everything they do, every keystroke, everything that they move around is saved in real time as well. So you don't have to worry that content is lost. On top of that, you also get version control. So if you ever accidentally change something or delete something, you can just always go back, the same as you can in revision control in a Word document, for example. For the more technical people, this is like code version control on GitHub, for example. This also means that with the central content warehouse, you could actually do real-time updates on your websites. What your team gets out of this is they have a clear history of all of their edits. They can see who changed what at which point in time. You will never have a conflict in that sense that two editors had opened the same document, and now whoever hits the save button last sort of wins and destroys the work of the other person. That can just never happen. And this is also great for cross-department coordination and collaboration. Just imagine your marketing team is working on all of the marketing copy text for your website, but they need detailed product information, for example. This sort of information is ideally not maintained by the marketing department, but by the product department, because they develop the products, they know all the details. If they also have access to your content warehouse, they can work in this structured list of documents that describe the individual products, and they just capture all of the information about the products that you have, which can then, in whatever level of detail, be used by the marketing team. They can just pick the photo or the title and the photo, or the entire technical spec that might be in another section of the product description. And they can use that on different pages, again, in social media posts, all that sort of stuff. Let's transition over into the power of structured content. What is structured content? Structured content just means that, as opposed to how most websites on WordPress work, in WordPress you often have the situation that you have a lot of creative freedom. You, as the content author and editor, you can just select a piece of text and tell it to be green, for example, or 32 pixels in size, or center aligned. And then, like, another paragraph below that, you insert an image. Then you have a bulleted list, but you tell that bulleted list to have like a bigger font size or a smaller font size. So what you're doing there is that you're not only managing the content, but you're also applying visual design to it. Like, you're designing the content to a certain degree because you're applying colors and size and all of that sort of stuff. So structured content draws this clear-cut line between what is the semantic structure of your content. So is something a headline, a subheadline, a bullet list? Is this an image or a video? Does this piece of content relate to another piece of content. All of this sort of stuff can be represented in structured content. And since you won't be really able to apply any sort of visual design to it, this is actually not a limitation, but this is superpower, because that means that you can reuse this piece of content completely agnostic from the platform that will display it. So imagine this is displayed on your website with just this one-to-one relationship between your website and the content warehouse. You might think it would be very beneficial to, in fact, design the content just right when I'm editing it. But imagine you don't only have your website connected to it. Maybe you also have an Android and an iOS app connected to it, or you want to generate LinkedIn posts out of this. In these scenarios, it becomes, I think, really apparent that it's beneficial to leave the visual design of the content to the platform that will display it, because nobody wants a green headline on LinkedIn. In fact, you can't even have a green headline on LinkedIn, and you probably also don't want that in your Android app. So this sort of separation of concerns is something that is a superpower of structured content. And this goes even further. So this is not restricted to semantics of is this a headline or not, but what you can do, as hinted to before, is since you have all of the information that you need to represent your organization online in this content warehouse, you can start to create semantic connections between those pieces of content. So for example, you have a blog article and that starts to talk about certain aspects of individual products that you might have. So instead of just writing this blog article and copy pasting facts about the product into the blog article right away, what you can do with structured content is you can reference product information from another place in your data warehouse. So you may have this comprehensive list of all of the products that you have, as we talked about before. And instead of copy pasting stuff, you create a link between your blog article and a specific product in your products list. And with this, you are automatically in the situation that 2 years from now, your product title changes or anything else about your product changes. And you only have to update that in the product information in this one place, which immediately means that wherever this product is referenced, this change of the title or whatever product information you might have will automatically be updated in all of those places where you referenced the product information. And this is the part where content warehouses become the superpower, especially of smaller teams who can't afford to have like a whole army of content editors who can copy paste information overnight. To extend on that example of product information mentioned in the blog post, let's go one level higher. Let's make this a little bit bigger, the example. Imagine you have your organization is a holding structure and you actually have 2 or 3 companies organized below the umbrella of this holding company. What could be beneficial in some scenarios would be that the umbrella holding company runs the content warehouse. Everybody from all 3 organizations works in the same space. You can, of course, subdivide access to individual spaces. You can do all of this, but still you get the benefit of having all of the content in one place. And then you can, on specific access levels, you can fine grain the control to the to like who can access which piece of information, but you still are in the superpower of being able to reuse content on 3 different websites. So let's say each of those companies has its own website, but their service portfolio overlaps just ever so slightly, or it's beneficial to mention a case study from one of the other companies, or you can upsell products from one of the other companies. You can mention services by one of the other companies. And because you're able to reuse descriptions of services, of service portfolios, of testimonials, of any sort of case study content, even blog articles, because all those three websites can have access to the same pool of information, you can, even across websites, use this ability to reference content from each of the other companies. And that immediately also brings you the benefit that if content that is relevant or maintained from one of the companies, like the name of a service or the title of a blog article or even like a piece of pricing information or something, then all of the other websites will update at the same time, which is, of course, so amazing and mind-blowing that I don't even understand how many organizations don't run like this today. Like, to copy paste all of that stuff back and forth seems like madness, but there really is a solution. And that's my message in this podcast to you today. So let's talk about a couple technical and security related aspects of this entire website setup. Security wise, this also has a couple of upsides. Let's start with backups. You can just back up your semantically structured content from one place because you just need to back up this one content warehouse and not a bunch of different websites. So you just take a backup of this entire thing, and to stay in the same swim lane, to protect this content warehouse from outside intruders, since the content warehouse is technically not part of your website. Like, imagine the website or the websites or any consumer of the content of the data warehouse is technically independent from each other. You can respect this sort of independence in how you set up your IT security. So the content warehouse, for example, could be only accessible behind your firewall or inside of your VPN or only at your office location or however you like. So it's just not possible for outside intruders to get to your content warehouse. So your websites have like a special access key to get this content out of the warehouse whenever content changes over there. But if malicious actors would try to hack your website, then in simple terms, there's just not a lot to gain from this hack, because when your website pulls the content out of the content warehouse and puts it into the layout of the website, this process just happens once when you update your website. And this process basically takes a bunch of HTML files, which are essentially text files, and places them on a publicly available server. So if a malicious actor would get access to this publicly available server, well, then they only have access to information that is in fact accessible anyway when you're viewing the website. So you also have like a much more fine-grained control over the security of this entire setup. So to get away from security and into more technical benefits that you have, one thing that is very important for all of us at Dingy is we want you or your organization to run on platforms that are digitally sustainable. And so the term digital sustainability does have two different sort of meanings to us internally here. So one is your entire IT infrastructure has like an as small as possible CO2 footprint. That is one aspect of sustainability. The other is, as I also mentioned while coming into this episode, nobody wants to rebuild their website every 2 or 3 years. Like, to just call an agency and have them build a new website every 2 or 3 years and to completely trash the one that you had before, that's just not sustainable. Like, it doesn't really make sense to do this, because the migration from one system to the other and this clear cut is not good for SEO. It's not good for your staff who have to learn like new things and so on. So nothing of this is really sustainable. And with this setup, with this separation of concerns, you can run your comprehensive content warehouse. Everybody knows how to use it. It stays the same for many, many years. You can individually iterate and optimize the content warehouse for usability of your teams internally. And then external partners or even internal teams, but like whoever works on the individual consumers of this content, like the website, like the social media channels, like apps, like all of this sort of stuff, they just have the content ready to work with and don't have to worry about the technical complexity of also setting up a content management system, because that's already in place. And so with this, you really make like little islands where each of those islands can act independently and optimize for themselves while still interacting with all of the other islands. So this really leads us over to the team impact, which is that your entire organization can work in the same system with regards to managing content about your product, services, all of your company's intel. And this really is, as we've seen in our experience doing this for many years now and working with organizations to implement exactly these systems, that is for many members of your team, that will be a transformational experience, because usually there's always this point where somebody on your team will say, well, I don't have access to that information. That is just in another silo. That is hidden in some sort of file that is on that one other OneDrive instance or whatever. Like it's somewhere else and I can't just work with this right now. And to have people go into this content warehouse and have access to all of that information, again, you can, of course, decide who has access to which areas of the content warehouse. Not everyone has to have access to everything, but the content in itself is semantically connected. And as such, you get fine-grained control who gets to work with what. But theoretically, everything is available to everyone, right? So to put all of this together, we at Dingy Studio are huge fans of content warehouses, same as you probably already have for data warehouses, for business intelligence, number collecting, all that sort of stuff. The idea is the same. You have all of the data in one place, so you can work with all of this in relation to each other. And so in the next episode, we're going to get into a much more concrete example of a website system that has been around for 7 years now, and that last summer, without any work on our part as the agency who built this, could intake a whole nother website from a sister company that was a WordPress installation. Like this entire website moved into this content warehouse, and they could launch a new website without our involvement, none whatsoever. And I want to talk about that one on the next episode. Thanks for listening. See you there. Bye.